Folks, good evening. This is Greg Williams, your instructor. Hopefully you know that by now. I owe you some assignments back, so I haven't forgotten about you. I will get those back to you next week. Everyone's doing well so far. You shouldn't have any issue or fear about, grades. I always like to say, don't let grades get in the way of your learning. Um, any questions that you might have for me? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm assuming you have no questions. All right. So tonight we have a treat for you. I have a treat for you every week, but here's a special treat for tonight. Our speaker this evening is Carol Erdman. Carol is a very successful business person, and she has agreed to talk to us on moving from a designer to a manager, how to create a strategic focus. And her description reads, as an instructional designer, you're often focused on the details of a particular course or series of courses. As a training manager, focus becomes broader and more strategic. At the end of the 60-minute module, you should be able to explain the difference between managing development and managing a system for training. You'll be able to describe the differences between task need analysis and a human performance analysis, and then name 3 primary responsibilities of a training manager. So here's Carol's background. She's currently the president of Insight Training and Development, and she has basically earned her living as a consultant. So she's been um, president of Insight since 2011. Prior to that, she also, worked as a senior consultant for Insight from 97 to 2011. And then prior to that, she had her own consulting company, Chesapeake Consulting Company, and was very successful in that. Had a lot of big contracts with the Navy, DC Metro, etc. And I always point to independent consultants as, to me, amazing people because it's like, gosh, they can make a living just out of being a consultant. I marvel at that because I don't think I could do that myself. And I always say, I give them a lot of credit for doing that. And also, Carol is an alumni of the UMBC ISD program. So we're happy to welcome her back. Not that she's ever left, but she's, lives in this area. And Carol, we're really pleased to have you here tonight. Thanks for sharing your valuable time and expertise. Carol, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hi, everybody. And Greg, thanks for that wonderful intro.
Sure.
Let me give you just a wee bit more background. I actually got my undergraduate degree from UMBC as well. I mean, I usually say they can't cut that umbilical cord. I continue to be, wrapped around UMBC. So I got my bachelor's degree there, and I started working in the human resources field, employee and labor relations for the most part, and found it to be a very reactive field. I was working for Sinai Hospital in Baltimore and then University of Maryland Medical System, and found that when you dealt with grievances or EEO charges or just employee complaints, you were really working on the negative aspects of what's going on in an organization. And I found, well, from a personal perspective, it just gave me headaches to be working in the negative stuff. This was really back before, we're talking mid to late 80s. It was back before many organizations even had a training department. And I was sort of one-on-one counseling a lot of managers and a lot of employees on how to work together better so we didn't get into these employee and labor relations issues, and started doing some training on my own. And at that point, UMBC was just starting this ISD master's program, and Dr. Cook, who founded the program, was heading it up. And I was very engaged with UMBC, talked to him, and I said, you know, I'm doing all this training stuff at work because I feel it's more proactive than the reactive stuff I'm doing, but maybe I should go back and get my master's degree to see if I know what I'm doing. Because, you know, to me, standing up and presenting was training. I really didn't have a good concept, and we didn't have a training department at Sinai Hospital. I had no mentors or role models. So I wasn't sure if what I was doing was right. And so the ISD program really helped me to understand how people learn and what you need to do to get people. And in my case, I was looking more at professional development and leadership training. But even on the technical skills side, what's going to make people improve on the job? And I kept looking at it almost from a labor and employee relations lens. How can we make sure people have the skills, but also how can they contribute so that we don't get into some of these performance and employee relations and labor relations issues? So that was my background, and I share that with you because that was also my perspective coming into the program and coming into training. And as I left the medical system, I decided to go on my own and be an independent consultant in the training field. I really wanted to leave labor and employee relations behind, and was really fortunate that my business blossomed and ended up getting sort of eaten up by Insight Training and Development, and I came on board with them and then grew their company and became president CEO of Insight in 2011. And we have many of our employees are on staff, but we also have consultants as well. And we've got just about 37 consultants that work with us now. So wanted to give you sort of a little bit of background. I think that helps share with you also as I go through some of the things we're going to talk about today. The background that I bring also, of course, gives me a certain perspective and probably some biases as well. So I always like, you know, for transparency's sake, to let people know, here's my background. And so when you're hearing certain things from me, understand some of those biases are incorporated there. I would love to hear very briefly if everyone can share your name, and then either whether you're in technical training, professional development training, that is ISD, whether you're on the computer-based training side, virtual training, webinars, or classroom-based, or if you are looking to potentially transition into the ISD field, or if you're getting this degree to go into another field. I know there are a number of people in, for instance, knowledge management and business process engineering that can get incredible benefits from having an ISD degree. So would you mind sharing with me if we could go around and you could share a little bit about your background?
I can share first. So, hello, my name is Brad. I'm a fourth grade teacher in Montgomery County, and I'm getting the ISD degree as part of a requirement for like continuing teacher education, and also for potentially moving out of teaching later on in a couple of years down the road.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Jump in
Stacy,
here,
are
folks.
you still on? Would you like to go next? Oh, go ahead.
Well, this is Sean. I can go next. My name is Sean Herbin. I work at Northrop Grumman as a technical skills trainer. So mostly what I do is hands-on actual technical skills training, mostly soldering. We are looking to transition more into web-based trainings for those things that really don't require the hands-on skills. So I have just started developing web-based trainings I have an undergraduate in education, so when I made the move into manufacturing, I decided to go back and go ahead and get the ISD degree to really further myself and get more involved with training.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sean.
Stacy.
I can go next. Oh,
Okay.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Connor Pequini. I'm a multimedia developer at GP Strategies, and we do mostly software adoption where we train other clients on the adoption of like software that they integrate to their systems in their companies.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Stacy, I've unmuted you.
Who do we have left?
Thank you. This is Stacy. So I'm a curriculum manager at Booz Allen, and I guess looking to. I don't plan on changing any career path anytime soon. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now. I really just want to do it the best I can. So really just trying to learn how to sort of step up my game in a strategic way. So I'm looking forward to hearing your points.
Excellent. Thank you. And do we have one more person?
I think we have two more, Heather and Pat.
Okay.
Well, I'll go. This is Heather. Hi. So yeah, I guess I feel like when you were, I'm sort of all of the above. My job is I'm working at Morgan State University, and my official title is Instructional Technology Specialist. And basically what we do is a little bit of what everyone's already said. My sort of audience are actual faculty members. So a lot of what I'm doing is I'm helping them, like Todd said, with the software adoption sort of side of it, but the instructional technology software that they need to use. We do a lot on the e-learning and sort of the web-based training in that I'm actually teaching them how to do it, like how to use our learning management system, and throwing in some best practices along the way. So I do, sort of almost like a train the trainer in a weird sort of inception kind of a way. And so yeah, it's just a little bit of all of the above. So I don't really think of myself as a manager because I think of them as my learners, but at the same time I kind of am managing them because I'm training them and they have to go out and train, so it's very weird, but it makes sense when I'm in the middle of it, but when I try to explain it to other people, it just gets weird. But so yeah, I think just just kind of learning how to do that a little bit better, because like I said, I feel like I'm in a really weird gray area whenever I try to explain it to people. But just all of the different speakers, I've been just sort of taking it all on board. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And we have one more.
Pat, I think you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. My name is Pat, and I work at UMBC, and I'm a transfer evaluator. So I really don't do any training like everybody else, but in an impromptu way, I do help faculty, staff, students, and teaching them transfer credit. But I'm in this program so that after I retire, I plan on pursuing still work and pursuing ISD.
Okay, excellent. That's great. I find that people who take on this field after they retire, they do so because they've really got a passion for others to learn. So I wish you a lot of luck in that career when you get to it. Okay. So I shared with you, and Greg shared with you, there's 3 objectives that I'd like to meet for tonight. The first is focusing on the difference between managing the development of a course and managing a system for training. So with that as a backdrop, what do you need to do differently to manage a system of training rather than managing a course? So for a course, you do needs analysis or task analysis. You know, what are the learning objectives that people need? What's the research that I need in order to answer those questions? Writing objectives, learning objectives, and then the design and development, whether it's CBT or some other form of virtual training or classroom-based materials, all of that, and then delivery. What's the difference between doing that and managing a system of training? What are some of your thoughts? I have to share this. See, you thought, oh, I get to sit back tonight and listen to another presenter, and they're going to tell us a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to take notes. And you remember I went through this program, and so I know how adults learn, and we don't learn when I'm talking, we learn when you're talking. So you're going to find this to be probably a little more interactive than you wanted. So I'm going to be quiet now and hear what you have to say about the differences to managing a system of training.
Can I ask a quick question? Can you define exactly what a system of training is?
Sure. So managing a course, I just went through that. I don't want to go through sort of an explanation because that gives us the differences. But if you are coming into an organization, hopefully you don't see a lot of independent courses. You see a system of training courses. So that's what I'm talking about, rather than an independent course or a collection of independent courses.
Okay, can I just, I'm gonna sort of chime in, I guess. And I'm hoping that this is kind of along the lines of what you're trying to get at. So, gosh, okay, so we're kind of in the process of, I guess, designing a system. I can't really say managing the system yet because we're still putting it together. But because we really had to, we actually did have a bunch of individual courses, and we had to sit back and look at what our faculty needed to learn and to how to manage our new learning management system. So we're in the process of transitioning over from Blackboard to Canvas. And then it kind of gave us an opportunity to sit down and say, okay, now we can sort of make all of these different random bippity boppity boos sort of kind of come together under one umbrella. And we can really use this transition as a jumping off point to say, okay, so you have to learn this big, huge learning management system anyway. Let's also bring some of these other things under this umbrella, because it all kind of, you know, Canvas is like, our learning management system is kind of like the major sort of hub in the wheel. And so in reimagining all of this, we did sort of weed out things we didn't need anymore, but we kind of had to look at it and say, okay, so what do they need first? What do they need, you know, right now? And then we kind of really started to plan it out. So we actually started looking at it in phases, because it is a bit of, I guess, a little bit of change management. But, you know, we had to look at it like, okay, well, they're used to Blackboard, the ones who were, and we had to do a whole, I guess, sort of a miniature analysis, like, okay, well, what are our users? Like, some of our users are heavy Blackboard users and they're going to be mad. Some of our users are heavy Blackboard users and they can't stand it, so they'll be happy to move. Some of our users are like, I'm not using technology at all. What the heck are you doing? And so we really had to think about, how do we reach all these different people and bring them, kind of, you know, pull them, some of them kicking and screaming along, you know, and what do they need? Because we really had to look at, you know, what percentage of our faculty are what we would call, you know, sort of, you know, quote unquote tech savvy, and which one of them are basically like Luddites, like, no, I refuse.
Yeah.
They're still
Yeah.
very much sort of stand and deliver. And we're like, well, how and what? And so we really had to start designing trainings to reach all those different people on this thing. And then from there, we had to go out and say, okay, well, that's phase one. Some of them will be happy with that. And that's because we can't really make them come. We can't make them do these trainings. So we're like, all right,
Right.
well, they come to this one and that's going to be enough for some of them. So what can we pack into that is kind of, sort of common denominator. Everyone can do this and we'll be happy with that if they do nothing else. And then we went from there and, we've started pushing trainings out. I mean, we've already planned them out into the next year, just sort of rolling them out. As far as what we're going to teach and when we think they might need it. And, so that was interesting to be a part of that planning. So I'm not sure if that counts as managing, but I think ultimately
Absolutely.
we're going to kind of get into sort of, and that's actually the next question, because we've sort of gone through phase one and we kind of looked at each other because there's only 3 of us and we went, whew, okay, that's done. So now what are we going to do as new people come in? Like, because we kind of thought of it as, okay, this is phase one, that's phase two, that's phase three. But even when we start moving into phase two, there's going to be new people who come in who are we going to put them back at phase one? Like, how are we going to manage, all of this? So
the ongoing organizational learning. Yeah.
Yes. And so, we kind of, now we're getting into, it's the whole weird, like, we're putting a lot of it online and we just, we had to have a kind of a, we call it come to Jesus moment. Like, okay, well, some of our learners do not want to be online. They want a face-to-face. And we're like, okay, well, how are we going to manage that? Who's going to deliver that? Because we're going to be busy in phases 2 and 3. So that's kind of our conundrum right now. And we don't really have a good answer to it. Like, we literally just had this conversation today, so we don't have the answer. But
oh wow, yeah.
So
that's
that's
exactly what you're doing. You are developing a system for training, and that's very different than a lot of isolated courses. The BIP bop. I didn't write down what you said, but the isolated courses that don't mesh together. And here's the thing, and we've learned this within a course, but it's the same thing when you go outside of one particular course. Our brain learns in a linear function and when it's connected to other things. So for instance, excuse me, with Gagne's 9 events, when we talk about recall of prior learning, the reason why we do that, of course, is because the new learning needs to connect to something we already know. So we want to, in a course, give them recall of prior learning as one tool to connect things, to make the learning easier for them. It's the same thing when, on a broader scale, if you take now the 30,000-foot view, we don't learn well from a bunch of isolated courses. So we don't want to see this course over here and this course here, and it's got to make sense to us. So there's got to be that system for learning that makes sense for the brain. So an organization that really has it all together has career ladders, and within those career ladders there are job families, there are skills within those job families, and people can see these are all the skills that I need to be successful in my current job. And if it's well laid out, they can actually check it off the list. I already know this, I need an advanced level on this, I need a beginner level on this. And if I want to move up in this area in the organization, let me take a look at that job family. What are the skills that I need to be successful here? And some of those skills, most of those skills are going to be technical skills, but some of them are professional development skills as well. Is this job stressful, and therefore do I need stress management? Does this job require internal or customer service, and what are the skills there that I need? But that's when we're managing a training system, we're looking at the whole organization as one large entity, and all of the skills that are needed that need to be trained, or that people need to know. I would look at it that way, that people need to know. They may have come in with some of these skills and behaviors, but they need to be successful in their job. And the system networks it all together so that we see this is what's needed as an organization to be successful here. And let me just pause there for a moment. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with people? Do you see that in organizations that you either now or have worked with before?
I would say yes, because this is Pat. I would say yes, because at UMBC in enrollment management, we just went through 2 parts of TED Talks because we do lots of presentations. And we have professional development, we've done customer service, and of course the whole university did the sexual harassment training.
Yeah. And hopefully there's also somebody looking at, like you talked about, do faculty members have the technical skills to be able to teach the student of today? Do they have the change management skills? You know, students today have lots of different objectives for why they're in school. And are faculty members able to motivate them, and do they have the knowledge of what motivates students? Because you can, and we all know this, you can dump all the knowledge you want, and if somebody isn't motivated to take it in because they're just looking for the degree, some of that's on them, but some of it can be changed behavior if the faculty member has the skills to bring the right technology that engages them, or the right method of learning, or, you know, the ISD principles that you talk about in this program. And so you'd look at, you know, yes, faculty members need sexual harassment, absolutely, but is that enough to make them a successful faculty member? Do they have the research skills to make them a successful faculty member? You know, all of those kinds of things. And so there should be like one big, and I see in my mind sort of a board of, this is what's going to make somebody an acceptable faculty member. This is what's going to make a faculty member excel, like really knock it out of the park with every student. And then it's up to the faculty member to decide how much of that training they want, how much they want to deliver in the classroom, what their level of dedication to the students is. But yeah, there's so much that goes into that. So let me anybody else want to add in? Okay. Go ahead, please.
Oh no, sorry. I wasn't gonna go too much into detail, but basically I was thinking with just managing a whole system of training, just really, when I think of managing a whole system compared to just one course, is just really making sure everything's very consistent, especially with like an ISD process like ADDIE or something like that, just to make sure everything's in line. So,
yeah, and that if there are needed prerequisites, that the prerequisites are there, that that learners don't jump into an advanced course and pull everybody in the class back from learning because they weren't prepared for that advanced course. That the courses apply well to their job. All of that is within the ADDIE principles. Yeah. So here's the other thing that we haven't really touched on, is making sure that the training system is in line with where the executives of the organization want to see performance. And I'll tell you, for me, this was the biggest shift. The rest of it made sense. I mean, I almost felt with the rest of it like I'm managing a course, so of course I'm going to put the prerequisites that are needed in module 1 before we get to module 2. Okay, so now I can take beginner X and go to intermediate X, and then I can look at all the other competencies that are necessary. So it seemed like I was building and moving from building a course, managing a course, to managing a system. To me, wasn't a huge leap. The huge leap for me was seeing training from the eyes of an executive.
I'm sorry, baby. Well, when you get out the tub, we'll fix you, okay?
Instead of seeing training in the eyes of a learning person. Because for many, many years, you know, going back to when I was in the ISD program, it was all about performance objectives and making sure that we could measure the learning and making sure that they were specific to the task that the employee needed to do. And what I found was that was not hitting it with the executives. I was not connecting well to them. So what are some of the things that you think I needed to change to speak not in terms of competencies or learning objectives, when I had to focus more on managing systems and leading the executives in an organization to implementing these training systems? What did I need to do differently? Instead of talking in terms of competencies or learning objectives, what did I have to talk in terms of? Any thoughts?
Well, this is Brad again. I think you have to talk in terms of outcomes. What is this training going to result in benefiting your business? How is, you know, training X, Y, and Z going to, the competencies or objectives that they meet, how is it then going to increase the performance of the company?
Yeah, exactly. And to me, I was so proud of being able to develop a 4-part objective. You know, I learned that at UMBC. This is my trade. This is what I need to be selling, because most of the organizations that I worked with didn't understand measurable objectives, learning objectives, and so my thought at first was, they don't get it. They don't understand that this is the value that I bring. And it took me a little bit to step back and go, no, Carol, they're not the problem. You're the problem. You're talking your own language, and the C-suite could care less about what's really occurring in the classroom. They want to know what outcomes are occurring. So let's take a look at an example here. In the classroom, if we had an objective that was follow a 3-step process for greeting a customer on the phone. If you were to change that to be more in, so now you're, say, reporting that out to an executive in an organization, how would you change the language from a learning objective like this to outcome language that you would share with them?
Maybe you would say something like improved customer experience.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, that sounds great. Anybody else? Okay. I like the word experience. Let me share one particular example, because we say customer satisfaction, but I actually like experience better. Improve customer satisfaction with phone customers within 3 months following completion of training and whatever assessment we have by 8%. So I'm still making it an objective, but I've made it into a performance objective that somebody in an executive position would go, yeah, that's what I want to see done. This follow a 3-step process, what does that get me? So it's more outcomes. So let's take a look at one more. Conduct a 5-point preventive maintenance process on vehicles' brake system. So imagine you've got a group of mechanics, and this is what they need to do for company vehicles or if it's a trucking company. So spend a couple of moments thinking about how you would turn that into more of an outcome rather than a course objective.
Well, I think one of the things that
Okay.
you mentioned was, and in the last slide, was having a specific amount, like a percentage increase of effectiveness. And so I think having that quantitative data in your presentation to the executives or whoever it might be would be critical in the rewording of this.
Yeah, I agree. So in the classroom, and it's not to say we want to lose the objectives. Somebody who's designing this class still needs to develop an objective like this, and they have to take this and even be more specific about it. But if we're taking this to the executives, I would agree we need to definitely have some measurement to it. What else do we need to do? So does an executive in an organization care that the mechanic's conducting a 5-point preventive maintenance process on brakes? Maybe if it's their own brakes, they do. What are your thoughts? What are the things that executives in a company would be more concerned about?
I think something like this could be reworded in several different ways depending on what the strategic goals of the company are. Because let's say you have some feedback that, you know, the 5-point inspection or whatever preventive maintenance process is you don't have enough people, so maybe lines are slow, and that's sort of messing with the customer's day. And you know, so maybe getting more people on board. It also could be instead of a 4-point inspection, it's a 5-point inspection because of some safety regulations. So I think it depends on the strategic goals or what the real issue is.
Yeah, and I would agree. You've got to take a look at what's the mission of the organization, what are the strategies that are important to the organization. Now, if I work for FedEx and I'm in their training department and I know we've got trucks going out, you know, millions of them every day or millions of trips every day, and I'm looking at my maintenance, you know, my mechanical shop, and they're doing preventive maintenance on brakes of all of these FedEx trucks that are going out. There's a number of things, if I'm an executive, that I'm looking at increasing. So ensuring faulty brakes don't cause accidents. I would imagine that's probably important, right? It could be that they didn't cause an accident, but the driver calls in and says, you know, my brakes are soft, and so now I have to take the truck out of service. So now that has an impact. So the percentage piece or the measurement piece would be something like reducing lost time, reducing repairs, increasing the availability of vehicles. And you're right, we would have to know what the strategy of the organization is, what are their key performance indicators say, but we're going to take a look at those and say, as a result, we think that this improved training is going to have a direct impact on accidents and you know, vehicles taken out of service. And here's our projection for the increases or decreases in these statistics. So when we're managing a training division, we're really looking at what's the mission of the organization, what are the strategies, what are the key performance indicators that the organization has that measure their outcomes. and how do I align the training with that. So if I'm managing training, and now I'm going to sort of take it back to what we were talking about before, I want to have this system that includes all of the different skills that the employees need, all of the prerequisites that are needed before we give them training on the next skill. But it's not just for doing the job. There's got to be a link between all of those jobs, all of those job families, and then the strategies of the organization. And so when I go to sell a training system, basically the plan for our training for an organization, I don't start, and again, to me, this was difficult to learn because I wanted to start at the very bottom with the task list. Here are the tasks they need. Here are the behaviors that need to change. Here are the skills and the competencies. Let me build training around that and let me sort of fold it into the job description. And so I was thinking from the task moving upward, and what I realized that when I started managing training systems was that I had to start with the top and move downward. So I'm managing a system of training that's going to move a workforce toward hitting our strategies, our mission, our vision, our values, and from a measurement perspective, our key performance indicators. And I've worked as a consulting firm. Insight Training Development is a consulting firm, and we work with hundreds of companies. And I've rarely seen, very often they bring us in and they go, help. You know, we've got all this training and we've got some things that are aligned and we've got some things that are going well, but we don't have this multifaceted system that starts with where the organization needs to go in terms of its performance and links it all the way down to the individual performance and the individual skills, and that the training builds to get that organization to achieve those key performance indicators. Make sense? Thoughts? Thoughts, anyone? Have you seen training systems in any of the organizations that you've worked with that are fully aligned that way, that feed from the mission, vision, values, strategies, key performance indicators, and then move down to job descriptions, tasks, skills, and the training aligns all of that?
Well, I can give an example that's what I would say the opposite of an efficient system like that, where in the county which I work in, we have a professional development online tool, and there is absolutely zero organization to how the classes are lined up. Essentially, the only way to figure out what you need or what the next steps are to speak with someone within like the training department or administration at your school. So having that type of system would be really beneficial, but sadly, we do not.
Yeah, and most of the organizations that I work with don't. And so you're bringing up something that we see routinely. And yet, when we go into organizations, there's a huge appetite for it. So if you're looking for other places to use your ISD background to move into, I think many organizations are ripe for this this kind of focus and this kind of skill is really developing training systems. Okay, let's talk briefly about the difference between a task analysis and an HPI analysis. So human performance improvement, and let me actually give not really a definition, but just a little bit of an explanation. Human performance improvement is results-based, it's systematic, and rather than focusing on wants, needs, the kind of thing that you might do in a task analysis, human performance improvement follows a results-based approach. So it really is looking at outcomes. What do we need to do to improve performance? And the way I like to look at HPI is in 3 different levels. How do we improve human performance at the individual level? So that's the performer level. What can we do to make sure that they have all the skills, including soft skills, necessary to do their job? But then HPI looks at the department level. What's the support that's needed at the department level in order for training of individuals to be successful? And then just as important at the organizational level, what needs to be in place? And for instance, one of them would be to have a systemic training system that we just talked about. But HPI really looks not just as a task analysis, but as a much broader way of looking at training. What are all of the things that need to enhance performance at the organizational level, at the department level, and then at the individual level? So let's use an example. Suppose you were, let me use this one. Suppose you were going to design a course on either labor relations. So if you're familiar with a union environment, you know, labor relations are the union folks and the ability they have, for instance, to file grievances when they disagree with management actions and contract negotiations. Or EEO, somebody files a discrimination charge or a harassment charge. So if you had to design a course and you were doing a task analysis, what would you do? And let me just broaden it a little bit. What are some of the things that you would consider including in that course?
This is Pat again. You probably would do some case studies into the course of things that you know that have happened and give a solution.
Yeah. So you're right, and let's take EEO because I think that's something that people are a little more familiar with. So if there has been some religious bias, for instance, you would take a look at what the law requires, teach it, and then say, so what would you do in this particular situation? And then maybe even have some role plays, because it's one thing to know how to abide by the law, it's another thing to say the right things. So that would be an example of something that you would do in a class. For labor relations, it might be, here's a class on how a manager should ask unbiased questions when doing an investigation for a grievance. Here's the steps that a manager should follow if they're meeting with an employee and a union representative when that employee has filed a grievance. So those are the kinds of things that we would include in a course. And if we did a needs analysis, those are the things that we would be looking up to in order to design that course. If we were doing an HPI analysis, and again, HPI analysis really focuses more broadly. Let's say at the organizational level, any thoughts on what you would be looking at the organizational level that would help you as a training manager understand what you should be doing or what your instructional designers should be doing or should be thinking about before they start doing the needs analysis for this class? So at the organizational level, what's important? Any thoughts? Let me bring it back to the C-suite again. What are the executives interested in? Why do the executives care that we have a course on labor relations or a course on EEO?
This is Heather. I would think it's because if nothing else, they don't want to get sued. I mean,
Yeah, that's ding, 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 ding.
you know, and so I mean, I hate to say it, but that's, I mean, if as far as those is, you know, I hate to say it, but you know, it kind of gets around like, okay, so I hate to,
Yeah,
who got sued?
yeah,
Why are we? And so about how the last, you know, how I guess there's always a training, but then something's changed, obviously. So we've got to update this. We got to look at this. You have to look at the law, you know. Like you said, we know the law, but lawsuit, you know, that person knew the law too, but they just decided to apply it differently. And that's how this has come to be now, because now we have to update this training and we have to talk about the latest permutation of, you know, what this looks like in practice. Because we all know,
yeah,
you know, equal opportunity, but then you've all got that one, you know, person who's always saying off-color comment. You know, so you have to kind of keep the road, I guess, and that's kind of the conversations that I would be wanting to have, as you know, as much as possible, because you just probably have to, you know, it's a loss. You have to get your lawyers in there, and I'm sure, but still, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so you really, you know, my thought is you need to have a flavor of the course before you start the course. And I believe this, even if it's a technical course, where are the gotchas? What does the organization want from this, you know, from the learning that's going to occur here? But for grievances or for an EEO type course, I would absolutely want to start with lawsuits. What are some of the things that we need to do to decrease our lawsuits? What's going to decrease the number of grievances? Because even though grievances don't cost us money, they cost us a heck of a lot of time. And so let's not keep our managers involved in this, you know, sort of negative stuff and dealing with grievances, and have them focusing on moving the organization forward. Some of the, and so when we do that, we recognize that one of the things that we really need in the course is proactive labor relations and EEO. How do we create proper relationships between employees and managers so we don't go down that road that eventually gets to lawsuits? How do we have a stopgap measure early on so it never gets to a lawsuit, but it's resolved early, you know, before it gets to something that's costly? And when we look at human performance improvement, one of the things that I found was that training was always part of the solution, always, but it was never the solution. And so a lot of times we've gone in to do training and we'll start with a human performance improvement needs analysis. And at the end of that, what we've said, now we'll do the training for you, but here's the 8 things that you need to do that's going to support the culture change or the policy change or, you know, whatever it is your organization is looking for. And Greg said, you know, at the beginning that he sort of applauds that I've been a consultant for so many years and made a viable living out of it. And I truly believe if there was one thing that I did that was beneficial to having success in that career, it was that anytime an organization brought me in and said, I don't know, we need a stress management class, I spent time, even if it was free of charge, figuring out what's stressing people out. Because I could give them a stress management class today, but if that stressor comes back tomorrow, what I've done doesn't solve their problem. And so doing a human performance needs analysis is so much broader than a task analysis or a training analysis that it really solves the major problems of the organization, and it aligns training with those solutions so that now executives who always saw training in the past as a line item, oh, this is something that we have to pay for. This is, we don't get anything, it's not an operational department, so we're not getting money for having a training department there. They begin to see the significance of the training department and the value that it brings, because we've aligned ourselves to these human performance issues at on a grander scale. Okay, the last thing I promised you, with 3 minutes left, and I'll take 1 minute and then see if there's anything else you want to discuss. The last thing I promised you was 3 things that are responsibilities of a training manager. And the first one is to scan the environment for issues. So today, cybersecurity is an issue. Are there new laws? Are there new ways for an organization to make money or to resolve their problems? These are things that a training manager should be a partner with operational managers in order to make sure they're doing. The next is to, and it sort of goes hand in hand, look at the organizational direction. What's out there? What strategies are there? What's the mission, the vision, the values? And how do I make sure that my training system is aligned with those? And then finally, am I conducting Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation? Am I able to show value for the training that we're doing? And can I show at the end of all of this that we don't just have objectives that say 95% of the learners who go through this course will be able to do preventive maintenance on brake systems, but I'm able to say we've reduced accidents in our company vehicles by 18% because of our increased effort in training, and that shows the value that training brings. And that training organization, that training department, never gets their budget cut, never gets their personnel reduced, because everything they're doing is aligned with the organization going forward. So those are the 3 things that I would recommend that a training manager should do. Any final questions? Anything that I didn't cover that I should have?
Not that you would have to have covered this, but I'm just curious, what are some ways that you come up with the, the specific types of objectives that are more strategic? Like, how do you come up with the numbers and, tying them to actual percentages of improvement?
Yeah. 2 ways, and I can answer that very quickly. The first one is I look at their key performance indicators. And so if there's an organization that says we will increase our sales number by 4% this year, I ask the executives, how do you plan on doing that? And most of the time they go, well, I don't know, we've just always put 4% in there. Okay, so let me go back and take a look at their training and see if there's ways that I can improve their training. And then based on that, there's a lot of research on the web that would say what certain skills produce. Sometimes it's a guess. They want to increase it by 4%, and we're going to say, okay, training will give you 2% of that 4% increase. And then that becomes our goal. And sometimes it's hard to isolate training from everything else, but what we've done is we've sold our value. And quite frankly, a lot of times they don't turn around and say, okay, show me how you did this 2% thing here. How did you increase it? But if you see where their key performance indicators are, you get a good understanding of the measurement that they're looking for. And then you do research online for how much training impacts that kind of outcome.
Thank you.
Any other? Yeah, sure. Any other questions? Greg, should I turn it back over to you?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Okay. I talk to a lot of people who sometimes think that everything in their career is related to instructional design, and I struggle for ways to let them know what other options are at times. Although, I kind of know what they are to a certain extent, but I'd like to hear your perspective, because some people will come into it and they'll say, I love, and they learn what it is and they get a master's or certificate, or they learn on their own and they say, gee, I love doing this. And they'll say, but, I think I want to do more than this, and I don't know what my options are, and how do I position myself to move forward in my career and stay in the general field of learning and development, but at doing different things and advancing.
Yeah. So let me name like 4 or 5 careers that I would say are brothers and sisters of ISD. Organizational design or organizational development would be one, where we talked earlier about change management. Anytime we're looking to move performance, especially at the organizational level, you need people that have an understanding of change management, how to get people to jump on board and be champions of the movement of the organization. So organizational development would be one. Executive coach or career coach would be another one. The International Coaching Federation is probably the most well-known coaching certification, I guess.
Okay.
So I know a number of people that have the ISD background, and they've moved into to become a career coach or an executive coach. Another one would be business process engineering. One of the things that I find is that people who map, they do as is and to be mapping. So they'll go into an organization and they'll do basically a task analysis, but they're really doing a process analysis. What are the inputs? What are the outputs? And very often using Visio, they design a process the way it is. So if your organization produces widgets, from the manufacturing all the way to the sales, they design the as-is state, then they take a look for potential improvements and design a to-be or a future model. The ISD background, being able to do a needs analysis, really relates well to that. And then training manager, I talked about developing training systems rather than developing training courses. So moving into management, that's more of what you would be doing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, all right, thank you all.
All right, folks, any questions? This is additional questions. This is your last chance. All right, Carol, I want to thank you very much for you spending your time and energy with us. I know your time's very valuable, so we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I enjoyed talking with all of you. Hopefully this was helpful, and it helps you either in your current jobs or probably more importantly, furthering you in your career and your career aspirations.